here. Wow, so considerably different, much cleaner edge, very, very clean. Hi, welcome back to our channel. Today we're going to do something a little different. We've got the unique opportunity to try out some new prototype stones. These stones are actually not for sale yet. They're still just testing out these grit ranges. So what we got was a 30,000 grit and 60,000 grit and 100,000 grit diamond stones from NSK Kogyo. It's a really unique opportunity to test this grit range on a stone. For me, I've tested before 20,000, I think a 30,000 grit stone, not in diamond, on other makers. I have used a diamond paste on strop before, but it's not really something that I use that much. I tend to really just like the edge straight from the stone and only with a pure clean leather strop. So it's going to be really exciting to test out these stones. So I was thinking about which blade to use for testing this grit range. I've got a lot of different steel around me, but the one thing that immediately came to mind was a CRUCIBLE WOOTZ blade made by Niko Hynninen. Niko is arguably the world's foremost expert in recreating historic crucible steels. It's a very pure steel and 1.6 carbon percent, and I believe it around 68 or tempered 268 HRC. I felt that this blade and the purity of this steel would be probably the best to test at 100,000 grit range. Before this, I did test these stones a little bit on white 1 and also blue super, but didn't really find too much of a big impact. I tend to usually sharpen most of the blades or finish them off on natural stones or even 3000 grit. So WOOTZ blade I felt would actually do the stones justice. So that's what we're going to use today. And for Niko's information, we'll leave all his information in the description below if you want to check out what he's doing. I'll be sharpening the WOOTZ blade starting at 400 grit. So I'll be starting at the 400 Hakuto S. From there I'm going to go in the progression 400 Hakuto S, 800 Hakuto, 1500 Hakuto, then I'm going to go to Hakuto 2S 3000, Hakuto 2S 6000, then going to Hakuto 3 12,000 grit, and then from 12,000 grit I'm going to make a big jump to 30,000 grit, then 60,000 grit and 100,000 grit. The jump from 12,000 grit to 100,000 grit I felt should be fine. It's a little bit of a big jump, but I think it should be fine just for this test. It's just first time, just kind of see where these stones are at. But in this video we're only going to be showing the test at 400 grit, 1,500 grit, 12,000 grit, 30,000, 60,000 and 100,000 grit. We're going to be using a few different tests as we move through the grit ranges, just really to see the difference between the grit ranges and what's the difference from even just from 12,000 to 100,000 or 400 to 12,000. And the best way we kind of thought to do this one is actually just by doing the test that I usually do with paper. And that'll give me a kind of general idea where the blade's at as we're moving through the stone progression. The next one is to actually use a digital microscope at 300 times magnification just to see the edge. And the other one was actually to cut a carrot and also tuna sashimi. A long time ago, this is over 15, 18 years ago when I used to work in a restaurant, I used to often test my blades on different vegetables and mainly carrots. I found that carrots offer a really good surface to see where the blade's at. So if I sharpened the blade up to 8,000 grit, cut the carrot with 8,000 grit, you could really see the texture and the surface, even appearance of the carrot. It actually looked polished, and when you put it on your tongue, it felt very different from a blade that was just sharpened at 400 grit. And for the tuna and sashimi, I thought it was a really interesting test just from sharpening so many sushi knives, Yanagiba, over the years, and talking to many different chefs in different levels of sushi restaurant. They've always expressed a certain desire to want the blade to, when it's cutting sashimi, that it actually leaves a very beautiful surface on the cut surface of the sashimi. So it made me think, oh, this would be perfect actually to test 100,000 grit on sashimi. And what would that feel like when you're eating it? What would it look like? So we decided also to use tuna sashimi for this test. So that's an overview of everything we're going to be doing in this video today. So yeah, let's get started. So we're going to start on the 400 grit stone, this CRUCIBLE WOOTZ blade. Currently the heel height on this is, I believe, 58 millimeters. Let's check. Yeah, 58.6 millimeters. And one interesting thing, about a millimeter or two behind the edge, we are at 0.4 millimeters. So it's pretty thin blade, but I felt the geometry for this blade is really nice. Right now it's at the surface is at 200 grit and it's in rough sharpening, rough polishing. And so we just brought the edge up. We're going to start on 400 and use this blade to go all the way up to 100,000 grit. So the 400 stone is a pretty standard stone for me. I use it every day, so I don't really feel too much difference here. I chose the 400S just because this is such a hard blade. But right now the 400 grit feels good on this blade, and we can ready now to test this. So we finished the sharpening on the 400 grit, and now we're just going to take a look at it under the digital microscope to see how it looks. So we just got this digital microscope from Amazon. It's a 300x magnification. We got it so we could actually see everything on the screen, which is the main thing we wanted to see. Okay, let's see how this looks. Wow, so the 400 looks pretty clean. It's a little bit of a burr here and there, but overall it's actually really clean. When I was sharpening on the 400, it was a little bit difficult to remove the burr at first, but after a few different techniques on the stone, yeah, it was actually no problem. But yeah, it looks pretty clean though for a 400 grit diamond. So looks good. So I think we can move on to the next test, which is cutting the paper. Okay, let's do a 400 grit paper test to hear the sound. Oh, actually, pretty clean. Yeah, from what it looked like on the screen, it's really clean, really light sound. And we're using a little bit heavier paper today too. So I'm pretty surprised. I'm not sure why it sounds so clean.
Is it because the paper you use different today or the WOOTZ?
It's definitely got to be the WOOTZ because we're using a heavier paper than the newspaper. The newspaper's half the weight, so this is a heavier paper. So I was expecting this to feel heavier when I cut it, but actually it doesn't. It feels lighter. And the blade edge feels much cleaner than I thought it would be. Yeah, newspaper cut too. So clean, really light. Nice blade. Okay, so next we're gonna cut the carrot and the tuna. Let's see how that goes. Okay, let's do a test cut with the 400 grit on the carrot, and then we're going to do a 400 grit test cut on the tuna. See the texture and compare that later on to the 100,000 grit. .400 grit edge on the carrot, and actually it was very, very smooth. Cut with almost no resistance whatsoever. So let's see, next will be the 1500. Gonna be pretty surprised. So next test cut we're gonna do is with the tuna, and this is the Japanese Shizuoka tuna that we're gonna be cutting. Yeah, the cutting was smooth, but there was a little bit of resistance, more than I would expect would be needed for a good cut on sashimi, but it was okay, but I think it'll be much better as we move into the higher grits. So that's all finished with the 400 grit test, so now let's move on to the 1500 grit stone. Okay, so we finished the 1500 grit stone. We didn't shoot it just because we got a lot of stones to go through. Yeah, it was really nice. And now we're gonna check out how it looks on the with the microscope. Okay, let's take a look at this 1500. Wow, so considerably different, much cleaner edge, very, very clean. The 1500 on the wood steel was a little different than I expected. The harder steel didn't really want to let go of the, I suppose, a wire edge of burr, or the base of the burr. So it took a little bit of time to get this clean on the stone. And after that we did some felt and leather strop, but wow, looks very different from the 400. Now we're going to go on to do a test cut of the carrot and the tuna. Okay, next is a paper test cut with the 1500 edge. Wow, pretty quiet. Yeah, really different. It's interesting to look at how it looks under the microscope and then visually how it looks from your naked eye to then cutting and hearing it. It's really different. Hardness range of this or any steel always makes it a little bit more difficult to remove or get a really nice clean edge. So it took a bit of time to get there, but really nice, really quiet. So let's go on to a carrot and tuna test cutting. almost no sound. Yeah, that's really interesting. It is a heavier blade, but even that, it's really quiet at 1500. Feels like a 3000 grit finish actually. Okay, let's cut tuna now. Yeah, very different from 400. And it was considerably different and looks a lot different, much shinier. A lot of the nice oils are coming across the surface of the tuna, so I can only imagine what it tastes like. The edge was very, very different at 1500 than the 400. I guess that's to be expected, but it was a nice feeling to cut. Okay, now we're going to move on to the 12,000 grit Hakuto 3 stone. So this is a diamond stone from NSK Kogyo that is actually very, very soft. I think one of the softest stone in the lineup. But it brings out a lot of really unique characteristics and really gets the apex of this edge really nice and clean, which I've seen in other steel, blue super, and similar steel that's in quite a high HRC range. So we're going to go on to this stone now and see how it goes. So we're going to go through the 3000, 6000, 10,000, and then we'll meet you back at 12,000. So we're just kind of going through 12,000 grit right now. This stone's really interesting. It's much softer, as I said before, than the other NSK Kogyo lines. But the 12,000 grit is very quiet, and really one unique characteristic about it that I don't see in a lot of other stones at this grit range is it really leaves a lot of bite on the edge. That could also be due to this knife in particular, but the stone really brings up a really nice edge that you often don't see at this grit range. So it's really nice. Really enjoying using it. So we just finished up on the 12,000 grit. That would be the 12,000 Hakuto 3 stone. It was really nice to sharpen on that stone. I don't use it a lot, so when I do get a chance to use it, it's a lot of fun. So we're gonna now check it on the microscope and see how it looks. So there's a big difference from, of course, the 400, 1500, but even as we're going through the stages of 3000, 6000, 10,000 up to here, there's such a big difference. The blade is very clean, very smooth. At this point, maybe we probably need more magnification, but what I'm seeing now is really nice. What was really unique about this edge was how much bite and pull that I was getting from my nails during sharpening. And I can really see why the edge is so clean, right at the apex. Very nice. So I don't really know what's going to happen when we go into 30,000. It's going to be really interesting. Check the other side. this can get really addictive. But first, let's do a paper cut just to hear where the blade's at. Wow, it's really, really different sound. Really different. Each stone is so different. It's definitely quieter. Is it getting actually sharper? That's really hard to tell. On the nails, it actually feels very sharp. It feels like it hasn't lost its edge or its bite from 1500, but the paper sounds so different. So let's go on and let's cut the carrot now and cut the tuna, see how that goes. Really feel like a carrot, but cutting was pretty beautiful actually. So quiet, so smooth, so clean. Yeah, it was really nice. The carrot has a really plasticky, polished feeling. It's really interesting texture actually. Doesn't really feel like a carrot. Tastes like a carrot, but texture is not like I would expect a carrot to be. So smooth, so silky and polished. So cutting the tuna with the 12,000 grit was really nice. Very quiet, kind of more what I would expect for cutting sashimi, and especially kind of this quality of tuna. The texture was really nice. The surface was really shiny and glossy. So it would be really nice to actually taste that later. So next, it's on to 30,000 grit. That's going to be quite experience, I think. So moving on to 30,000 grit, 60,000 grit, and 100,000 grit. There's a lot of concerns I had when I first actually thought about using these stones. Is my water clean enough? Is there particles in the water coming through the tap? Even though I have a filter on the tap, I'm still not sure that it's going to take out the particles that are coming through with grit contamination on those stones. The other thing I'm not sure about is the leather strop. When I get up to 100,000 grit, is the leather strop actually lower in grit, if that makes sense, than the stone? So that's what we're going to see. So let's go to 30,000 grit now.
Why are you putting on the glove?
I just started the 30,000 grit stone and I just touched my finger, didn't even realize it, and started bleeding, cut myself.
Did you cut your finger?
Yeah, this finger here. It was a really nice clean cut, so I think it'll go together pretty fast, but it was pretty deep. So no more sharpening today, but we'll be back at it tomorrow. So I thought we might as well try these three that we did today. The 400, 1500, and 12,000 grit. This is the 400. Then we have here the 1500 and the 12,000 grit stone. So I'm going to try the 400 first. Very good. Great texture, great taste. Texture is great. Surface texture is really nice, really smooth. At 400, actually, it's very, very nice. So let's see what the 1500 tastes like next. Very different. Very different. Very, very silky and smooth across your tongue. Wow. You can actually taste the tuna more. Actually quite a big difference from 400 to 1500. I wasn't expecting that, but actually really delicious. More than the 400. Okay, let's try 12,000. Wow, it actually does look different from the 400 and the 1500. Let's try it. Very different. Very different from the 1500. Actually, the taste is different. Texture is completely different on the tongue across the surface, but wow, very different. Tastes like a different piece of tuna. It actually tastes more buttery. Exactly the same tuna. Next is going to be 30,000 tomorrow. At this point, maybe we probably need more magnification, but what I'm seeing now is really nice. Really incredible bite. And actually the 60K has a much nicer bite. It's quite quiet compared to 60K. Much softer looking texture than we saw at 60,000.